There are several reports of data leaks, unauthorized authentications, and challenges of linking Aadhaar to multiple services without even telling people, and also an absence of legal safeguards. There's a very bad cocktail that plays out in global south nations such as ours. There is lower digital literacy. There's also lower general literacy, especially digital literacy. People would sell that in black markets, people who would then commit identity theft and fraud on behalf of the people. That's a very overarching question, but I think the first one would be having your people digitally literate. There must be, for example, in India, we have the three-prong test: legality, proportionality, and direct nexus to the job it's done.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Digi Pod. Today I am joined by Gyan Tripathi, who is a lawyer and has been working on the technology and policy side of things. We're discussing the Digital Nation Bill, which has been tabled, and it seeks to carve a digital identity. Now, of course, in Pakistan, the examples that we are given are this happens elsewhere, it's perfectly fine, and there are no issues with it, right? And that this is the path that we have to take forward. Jan, I'd like to know from you, because I know that around the Aadhaar card, there was a lot of debate and concern with respect to privacy and how it would impact. And of course, now it's been several years since it's been implemented. Could you tell us, because in Pakistan, what's happening is, oh, but India does it too. So what's the problem? Everybody does it, and we should do that too. If you could please tell us a little bit about the debates that are in India.
Absolutely. I am actually very amused by the proposal to set up a digital ID under the draft Digital National Pakistan Bill. Some of the stated objectives of the bill give an eerie deja vu of the Digital Data Protection Bill that we now have in India and the Aadhaar system. The Digital Nation Pakistan Bill talks about the need to leverage technologies for modernized governance, DPIs, and digital economy. And it looks at the proposed digital ID as a key building block. In India, our national digital ID, that's Aadhaar, has constantly found itself in the overarching tension of efficiency versus privacy. Just to give you a brief background, while the original motivation behind Aadhaar was genuine and rooted in the socio-economic realities of India, where we did need a robust means to track and disperse welfare benefits, especially in rural regions where fraudulent claims and identity thefts were rampant, Aadhaar was introduced. Although the plan had been ongoing since 2009, it was not until 2016 that Aadhaar got a statutory body, the UIDAI, in 2016. Over the years, the program has grown into one of the largest biometric identification systems in the world, with over 1 billion enrollees. So in India, nearly everyone now has a unique Aadhaar that's linked to their biometric, that is their fingerprints and their iris scans. There is no doubt that for many it has worked. Access to bank accounts has improved, direct cash transfers have become more streamlined, and government officials tout significant savings by eliminating the cost beneficiaries that used to be there. Yet, even with such apparent successes, the Aadhaar debate has been shadowed by grave reservations on how the personal data is collected, processed, stored, and shared. There are several reports of data leaks, unauthorized authentications, and challenges of linking Aadhaar to multiple services without even telling people, and also an absence of legal safeguards. Now, when Aadhaar was first introduced in 2009, there was little uptake. However, after the 2014 Modi government came, we saw a jam trinity that was Jan Dhan bank accounts, Aadhaar, and use of mobile to boost the digital India. Like I said, there have been many beneficiaries to this, but there are also reports of exclusion, fraudulent claims, and continued identity thefts.
Thanks for that overview. And what you also mentioned, I think, in connection to this, I mean, it's sort of eerie reminder of the data protection bill. Now, in Pakistan, there is no privacy legislation. We do not have a data protection bill. A bill has been on the cards for the discussion, but also that enables more access to data rather than the protection of it. Now, you've mentioned that there have been leaks, etc., and that is primarily the concern here that one, we don't, where there's an absence of legislation, and two, that people who has access, how it gets used, misused, and all of that. What has happened as a result of when there have been leaks, etc.? Any protection schemes, mechanisms, repercussions for that?
Unfortunately, there's a very bad cocktail that plays out in global south nations such as ours. There is lower digital literacy. There's also lower general literacy, especially digital literacy. There are poor cybersecurity frameworks, and the data protection safeguards. Like I said, India only got its data protection bill last year in December 2023. Before that, we had a Supreme Court judgment, the Puttaswamy judgment of 2017, and the IT Act of 2000. In India, when in cases of data breaches, that we have the nodal certain agency that takes charge and is tasked with tackling such issues. However, Aadhaar is such a massive issue because everyone needs your Aadhaar. And in India, you don't have, so ideally, Aadhaar is just supposed to be a number. It's a 12-digit unique number that you're supposed to provide to someone, and they can use a callback API to authenticate that it is indeed you who you are claiming to be. But in India, people rely on paper more, or that used to be the case until uh, some years back, where they would even ask for an Aadhaar card photocopy. So doesn't matter if you have your Aadhaar number or not, they would require an Aadhaar card photocopy. What it ended up was, interestingly, so there would be these people who would be doing your KYC, that's know your customer for various businesses. They would have stacks of your Aadhaar card photocopies. So just imagine a local shop having the Aadhaar numbers of literally everyone in that locality. And then that data was very valuable. People would sell that to people, to other in black markets or other people who would then commit identity theft and fraud on behalf of the people who had those Aadhaar cards.
And I mean, so in terms of the framework for criminal complaints, prosecution, we have the Cybercrime Law, the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act in Pakistan. But again, we've seen that where there are genuine complaints of data unauthorized access or data theft, etc., those don't get very far. And we don't see that those people really get caught and prosecuted. But then, of course, the law is used for curbing political dissent, etc. Now, what you've mentioned in terms of stack loads of people's identity, and it is being sold, and it's similar practice that we see that people's numbers are available and identity in the national identity card numbers and everything linked to it. Is there a framework by which this is prosecutable and is done effectively? I mean, it's one thing to have a framework and then for it to be effective.
Absolutely. So we do have a right to privacy judgment, that's Puttaswamy too. And now we have a Data Protection Act. However, that has not been enforced. We do foresee that with the rules that are forthcoming this year, there will be a solid mechanism to enforce your right to privacy. However, until now, people can only approach a court of law under the criminal codes. That is, if they can prove that they have suffered a criminal loss. Unfortunately, because of the limited state capacity, especially when it comes to cyber crimes, we see that people, like you said, those who are genuinely impacted by this, remedy is hard to come by for them. And this law is misused again to curb political dissent or against various other stakeholders.
You also mentioned cybersecurity, and especially when there is so much collection of data by public sector institutions, etc. And this is something that has been cited. I mean, of course, the linkage is flawed in the Pakistani context, where internet or network shutdowns are being linked to cybersecurity and national security. But what you really want is to secure data, especially when it's linked to people's identities and has everything on them. What kind of infrastructural security is something that should exist, especially when nations go on this digitization path? Or is there something that you've seen work elsewhere in the world, which is a better model to aspire towards? Of course, I'm not saying that it is just a global south issue, because we're critical of the global north in terms of surveillance practices and other, data protection practices, whether they're effective. But what needs to be in place infrastructurally and policy wise for digitization to happen to strike that balance between privacy?
That's a very overarching question, but I think the first one would be having your people digitally literate. They should know how to avoid falling into small scams like phishing attempt or replying to a random text on WhatsApp or over email. These are very small steps that the government can take by putting cybersecurity in the hands of their own people. Then by having strong governance framework at the legislative level and at the digital levels. At the legislative level, there can be laws, there can be policies that tell organizations and data collectors that is data fiduciary companies, on how they should collect, store, share, and process data. So if you have the data pipeline robust, then you can prevent leaks. Again, unauthorized access is different from a simple data leakage. A data leakage happens when there is just maybe an exposed API or an exposed data set is available and someone is able to get into it. Unauthorized access happens when someone is able to tap into a company's servers. Of course, there is no 100% foolproof system when it comes to cyber resilience and cyber security. But what the governments can do is by using privacy enhancing technologies or by using graded privacy, they can ensure the data that is stored either with them or with the companies of their own citizens is secured. Now, when coming to examples, there have been many global South nations have tried to emulate the digital ID system, most prominently the Kenya Maisha Namba system. However, it has again seen several legal challenges at the Kenyan Supreme Court and right now has been halted. Singapore and Estonia show good examples of how a digital ID could work. But again, they have enhanced state capacities and the citizens are also well aware. So it's one thing to recognize the right of their citizens. The second is giving them proper channels or mediums to enforce that right, and then the state capacity to ensure that the right is enforced.
So it sounds like what you're also saying is that it has to happen in an ecosystem where digital literacy, certain measures are important, and of course there are challenges that are playing out in courts, etc. as well, right? And it can't be sort of in a vacuum where you make these. And in Pakistan, we also question that on the one hand, and not just the absence of privacy legislation, but now with VPN blocks and registrations, we're going in the reverse of what good privacy looks like. And then on top of it, when you consolidate all of this with weak infrastructure, that just creates more vulnerability. And so, how can you make citizens less vulnerable is the question. Any final comments that you would like to add with respect to how you're seeing this develop, regionally or globally as well? And what is it that should be done? And you've already mentioned what governments should bear in mind when they are emulating models from different regions.
Absolutely. Let me share the example of India. So when we had Aadhaar, even though the Aadhaar's architects insisted that the system's efficiency was better and there would be less privacy hiccups, and they cited examples like I said, the direct benefit transfer and other things. Awareness around biometric data collection and privacy grew, and that saw two legal challenges. First was against Aadhaar itself, and second was that we got the right to privacy judgment. Perhaps there were to be a legal challenge in any other jurisdiction emulating such thing like there was in Kenya that can also help the citizens. First of all, in when they say the government is collecting data, then they can approach courts and say that there must be legal safeguards there. There must be, for example, in India, we have the three-pronged test: legality, proportionality, and direct nexus to the job it's done. So the government can collect data as long as it has the legal mandate to do that, as long as the data collected is proportional and there is a direct nexus to what the data is being collected and what it will be used for. So I think that's how we can do it. And again, the role of civil society, citizens, and lawyers is prominent when it comes to challenging states trying to usurp citizens' rights.
Thank you so much, Gyan, for making time for DawnNews English. This has been very helpful to learn that while digitization is the path that many nations are charting, but there are certain considerations that must be kept into account, and it can't be just rhetoric that comes from the government. Or we're often told this happens elsewhere, but as pointed out during this podcast as well, that there are concerns and challenges elsewhere as well, that there has to be striking of proper balance, digital literacy, as well as ensuring that privacy is maintained. Thank you. This is all that we have today.